Imagine, celebrities you idolize aren't who you think they are. Some are accused of selling their souls to secret organizations. Others are said to have faked their deaths, swapped with clones, or been silenced before they could reveal too much. Welcome to the Celebrity Conspiracies Iceberg. Tier 1. Illuminati in the music industry. Conspiracy theories need symbols, and the music industry has plenty of them. Triangles, single eyes, goats, pyramids, you name it. If you've ever watched a big award show, there's probably at least one moment someone online later calls proof of the Illuminati. The idea itself isn't new. The real Illuminati was a Bavarian secret society that dissolved in 1785. But in folklore, it never really went away. By the time the internet came along, the group had supposedly expanded into a global puppet master, controlling politics, money, and, of course, pop stars. If someone's too famous, too successful, the theory is they must have sold their soul to this hidden organization. Now, the most famous celebrity that got accused for this are Beyoncé and Jay-Z. Why? Simple. Because of their trademark triangle hand sign. Rihanna even played with rumors, staging a fake newspaper that crowned her the princess of the Illuminati. And then, Taylor Swift's love of the number 13 was enough for conspiracy blogs to add her into the ranks. And then it gets darker. Conspiracy fans claim music videos hide satanic imagery, pyramids, or even goats meant to evoke Baphomet. Certain lyrics are read as coded praise for a new world order. But the most morbid twist is the idea of sacrifice. Kanye West's mother died from surgery complications in 2007, but the rumor became that her death was a ritual trade for his fame. And when Whitney Houston passed in 2012, conspiracy fans twisted it into a ritual too, saying her death somehow made space for Beyoncé and Jay-Z's daughter, Blue Ivy, which is a very complicated way to interpret a child's birth announcement. And the accusations against Beyoncé don't stop there. Most of them are even darker, but we'll talk about it in the next entry. Most artists just shrug it off. Katy Perry once said, "It's just weird people on the internet," but joked that you really know you've made it when people start calling you Illuminati. So what's the deal? The truth is there's zero hard proof of a secret club running the Grammys. Most of the evidence is just artists playing with cool imagery or using marketing tricks to stand out. But at the same time, the mystery sells. Musicians know if they flash a triangle or throw in a spooky lyric, people give them free marketing gossip. That's probably why the Illuminati theory keeps going, because it works as both a creepy story and free promo. The Beyoncé is a murderer conspiracy. Here's the running joke that turned into a theory. Apparently, every celebrity is terrified of Beyoncé. Not because she's too talented, but because people online claim she's secretly evil. This started because fans noticed how often Beyoncé gets mentioned in other artists' speeches. It's on Adele's famous 2017 Grammy moment, where she literally broke her trophy in half and said Beyoncé deserved it. Conspiracists say this wasn't just praise, it was a tribute. Even the notorious 2009 VMAs, when Kanye interrupted Taylor Swift to shout out Beyoncé's Single Ladies video, has been reframed on TikTok. Some users argue Kanye wasn't being rude, he was protecting Taylor from Beyoncé. But TikTok netizens weren't satisfied with award show coincidences, so they took it further. By 2023, the joke had grown into the hashtag #ThankYouBeyoncé. Many users posted clips saying things like, "Beyoncé, please don't kill me." Even JoJo Siwa played along with this trend in 2023 and thanked Beyoncé during a live show to protect the dance community. But then she stopped posting online for 2 weeks, which of course sparked comments like, "Beyoncé got to her." In reality, JoJo took a normal social media break. But in conspiracist heads, disappearing for a minute is basically the same thing as being kidnapped. And then came the creepiest parts, linking Beyoncé's tours to the deaths of music legends. Here's a Beyoncé death timeline, where every tour ends with someone iconic gone. I Am Sasha Fierce Tour 2009 coincided with Michael Jackson's death that summer. Her 2013 Mrs. Carter Show tour got tied to Whitney Houston and Donna Summer, even though Houston had died the year before. In 2014, while Beyoncé and Jay-Z were on their On the Run tour, soul legend Bobby Womack died. In 2016, her Formation tour overlapped with Prince's sudden death. 2 years later, her On the Run 2 tour began, and Aretha Franklin passed away that same summer. The coincidences were eerie enough that TikTok users started saying, every time Beyoncé goes on tour, an icon dies. But how much of that holds up once you look closer? Well, here's where the theory falls apart. Most of those stars passed from health issues or overdoses. Michael Jackson from propofol, Whitney Houston from drowning, Donna Summer from lung cancer, Prince from fentanyl, Aretha Franklin from pancreatic cancer. None of those signs were of Beyoncé's ritual, and the timeline isn't even neat. Like we said, Houston died way before that 2013 tour. So is she secretly running a blood-soaked empire, or are TikTok kids just good at connecting random dots? Guess that's for you to decide. And the funny part is, there's another theory about Beyoncé's crimes. This one claims her music and art actually came from her victims. But we'll get to that in Tier 3. Dead stars who are still alive. Beside Illuminati, this is one of the most persistent music conspiracies. It's about stars who supposedly never died in the first place, like Elvis, Tupac, and Michael Jackson. There were autopsies, their funerals were broadcasted, and their families grieving. But for a chunk of fans, their idols were hiding, either to escape the chaos of fame or because something bigger forced them underground. The blueprint for all of this comes from Elvis Presley. When he died suddenly in 1977, most people were in denial. Within days, there were stories about him buying a plane ticket under one of his old aliases, John Burroughs. By the late 80s, people were claiming he was an extra in Home Alone. This summoned an entire Elvis sighting society, and they treated every blurry photo of a man with sideburns as proof he was still out there. One popular book even suggested Elvis faked his death to enter the witness protection after helping the FBI infiltrate the mob, which sounds exciting until you realize it would have required absolute silence from hundreds of people. Then came Tupac. He was shot in Las Vegas in 1996 when he was just 25, but fans seized on the fact that he called himself Machiavelli, after Machiavelli, who once wrote about faking your own death. Even Machiavelli can be rearranged into M alive, K, which the theorists claim is no coincidence. Add in unconfirmed sightings in Cuba, Malaysia, even a New Orleans bar, and the myth grew. Michael Jackson's 2009 death brought the same reaction. Theories popped up about him living in disguise, even that he'd appeared on TV as his friend Dave, a burn victim. Some of his collaborators didn't help too, hinting in interviews that maybe Michael was still around. The list doesn't end there. Jim Morrison, Andy Kaufman, even the Paul is dead rumor about McCartney, which we'll break down in more detail because it's a little more special, all play with the same formula. They're a way for fans to turn their grief into a story where their hero escapes instead of vanishes. Celebrity mind control glitches. Unlike most celebrity conspiracies, this one actually has a real starting point. MKUltra was the CIA's Cold War experiment in the 1950s and 60s, when they seriously tried to see if they could control human minds. The methods ranged from dosing people with LSD to hypnosis, even wiring electrodes into dogs' brains to remote control them. It was disturbing enough that Congress shut it down by the 70s. The victims eventually received compensation. The program failed, but the idea of mind control never left the culture. In conspiracy circles, MKUltra never ended. It just moved to Hollywood. The theory claims today's stars are programmed like puppets, their breakdowns or awkward moments blamed on glitches. When rapper Cardi B froze mid-sentence on a 2018 red carpet interview, the internet didn't believe it was a health problem. They called it a malfunction. Same goes for Al Roker's glassy-eyed freeze on live TV, Wendy Williams fainting in costume, or Britney Spears' second personality. Every odd moment is cataloged like a software bug. Then there are alter egos. Artists often create stage personas for performance, like David Bowie had Ziggy Stardust, Eminem rapped as Slim Shady, and Beyoncé introduced Sasha Fierce as the bolder, more aggressive version of herself on stage. But in conspiracy circles, alter egos are evidence of a fractured mind caused by CIA programming. When Beyoncé talked about Sasha Fierce taking over during performances, theorists claimed she was admitting to having a split personality installed by handlers. The same logic gets applied to casual phrases like voices in my head in many music lyrics. An artist might mean it metaphorically, but conspiracy forums take it as proof of psychological control. This feeds into the internet-born idea of Project Monarch. Unlike MKUltra, which was real, Monarch has no basis in declassified documents. It's a modern conspiracy invention. The story goes that pop stars are brainwashed using trauma-based programming, with the monarch butterfly symbol representing metamorphosis. So whenever a butterfly shows up in a music video, it gets flagged as a sign the artist is a monarch slave. The irony is that butterflies are one of the most overused design motifs in pop culture. They're colorful, recognizable, and easy to tie to themes of transformation, which makes them a designer's dream. But the real tragedy is that wild celebrity myths end up distracting from the actual victims of MKUltra, people whose lives really were dismantled by it. The 27 Club. This one basically is a bunch of legendary musicians who died at 27, and people started calling it a curse. It really began in the late 60s. In just a couple of years, Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones drowned, Jimi Hendrix overdosed, Janis Joplin overdosed, and Jim Morrison died in Paris. All of them were 27. At first it was just a coincidence, but when Kurt Cobain died at 27 in 1994, the club became a pattern. Then when Amy Winehouse died at 27 in 2011, and suddenly everyone was convinced there had to be something going on. There's this one theory that ties back to bluesman Robert Johnson, who supposedly sold his soul to the devil and, died at 27. That fed the idea that maybe 27 is some kind of deadline. You get fame, but only for a short time. Others drag the Illuminati into it, saying music executives sacrifice stars at 27 to keep the machine running. But here's the thing, the math doesn't really hold up. Researchers actually studied this and found no spike at 27. Musicians in their 20s in general have higher risks for drugs, stress, and non-stop shows. So it's not about the number, it's about lifestyle. Still, because so many famous names hit that number, it feels special. We remember the pattern, and we forget the countless others who didn't die at 27. So is 27 cursed? Statistically, no. Culturally, absolutely. It's less about numbers and more a way to turn tragic deaths into a myth that feels bigger than life. The Paul McCartney death hoax. Out of all music conspiracies, this one might be the most famous. The theory says Paul McCartney actually died in 1966, and the Beatles secretly replaced him with his lookalike. And if you think that sounds ridiculous, well, a lot of fans in 1969 didn't. The story goes that Paul crashed his car in 66, and the band covered it up by hiring a double. By 69, fans were convinced the Beatles were slipping hints into their music and album covers for listeners to figure out the truth. The clues were everywhere, apparently. If you play Revolution 9 backwards, people swear they heard "Turn Me On, Dead Man." At the end of Strawberry Fields Forever, John Lennon mutters something that fans heard as "I buried Paul." Lennon later said it was cranberry sauce, but once people hear "buried Paul," good luck convincing them otherwise. Then there was A Day in the Life, with the line, "He blew his mind out in a car." Not about Paul at all, but it fit the story too neatly to ignore. And if the songs weren't enough, the album covers made the case even stronger. Abbey Road is the big one. Fans saw the cover as a funeral procession. John in white as the preacher, Ringo in black as the mourner, George in denim as the gravedigger, and Paul barefoot, out of step, and his cigarette in the wrong hand. Behind them, a car's license plate read 28IF, supposedly meaning Paul would have been 28 if he were alive. Then there was Sgt. Pepper's cover with its psychedelic crowd, where holding a mirror across the drum logo supposedly spelled out, "He died." It spread so far that Paul eventually had to come out of hiding, literally posing for Life magazine to prove he was alive. He called the whole thing bloody stupid. Still, the rumor was so popular that Paul ended up joking about it years later, naming a live album Paul is Live. In the end, this just shows how much people love a mystery. Avril Lavigne died and got replaced. According to the theory, she actually died in 2003 and was secretly replaced by a girl named Melissa Vandella. Here's how the story goes. In 2002, Avril was everywhere. Complicated and Skater Boy had her all over MTV, but she hated the red carpets and paparazzi. So, allegedly, her label hired Melissa, a lookalike, to handle public events. That part actually makes sense. Lots of celebrities use doubles. But then Avril's grandfather passed away, and the story says she spiraled into depression and eventually killed herself. Rather than lose their golden goose, the record label supposedly slotted Melissa into Avril's life full time. The evidence is what keeps this theory alive. First, her voice. Early Avril had a raspy, deeper tone. A couple of years later, her singing sounded higher and smoother. Her interview personality changed too. Old Avril talked like a moody rock kid. New Avril suddenly sounded polite, soft, almost church girl sweet. Add in the visual differences like wider eyebrow gap, narrower nose, and shorter chin, people started making side-by-side comparisons. Even her handwriting got dragged into it. Her old signature was more cursive, while her newer handwriting looked blockier. Conspiracy fans insist your handwriting doesn't really change after your teens, so it must be a different person. Of course, skeptics say all of this could just be normal growth. People age, they change their style, they learn new vocal techniques, they get cosmetic tweaks. Avril also battled Lyme disease, which can completely change someone's energy and appearance. But the fun part of this theory is how stubborn it is. Every time Avril drops new music, the comments fill with "Melissa's at it again." It becomes less of a tragedy and more of a running internet gag. Still, if Melissa really is out there pulling double duty, maybe she deserves to finally drop her own album. But at least this theory still sounds kind of reasonable, since it's just about body doubles. There's an even crazier one though, that Kanye West is actually a clone. We'll cover that in Tier 3, but for now, let's move on to Tier 2. Nickelodeon Creep Club. Nickelodeon shaped a lot of our childhoods, but behind the bright show, there's a disturbing trail of predators, scandals, and cover-ups that fans now call the Nickelodeon Creep Club. It always starts small. In the mid-2000s, a freelance editor named Justin Smith was caught in an NBC sting on To Catch a Predator. He admitted to being there to meet a minor. Nickelodeon fired him. You'd think that would be the end of it, except years later, Smith was rehired, this time working on SpongeBob SquarePants. And he wasn't the only one. There's Brian Peck, a dialogue coach who worked on The Amanda Show, and then coached kids like Amanda Bynes. For 6 months, he abused a child actor named Drake Bell before being caught and arrested. He pled guilty to charges of committing inappropriate acts with a minor. He served time, but the industry didn't close its doors on him. When he got out of prison, Disney picked him up to work on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. And then, of course, you get to Dan Schneider, the architect of Nickelodeon's biggest shows. All That, iCarly, Drake and Josh, Victorious, Zoe 101. If kids were watching it, Schneider had his fingerprints on it. And that's not really a comforting metaphor, considering what's come out since. Janet McCurdy, who played Sam on iCarly, said in her memoir that the creator pressured her to do bikini photo shoots at 16, and even offered her alcohol on set. Nickelodeon later tried to pay her $300,000 to never talk about her experiences publicly, but she turned it down. Fans have also gone back and looked at Schneider's old social media posts, and they get disturbing really fast. Stuff like asking kids to write things on the bottom of their feet, take pictures, and post them online. His fixation with feet was a running joke in the shows too. But when you realize those shows were built around kids, it suddenly stops being funny. Theories get darker when you bring in the stars Schneider discovered. Jamie Lynn Spears was only 16 when it came out that she was pregnant, which abruptly ended Zoe 101. The official story was about her boyfriend, but there are persistent rumors that Schneider might have been involved. Then there's Amanda Bynes. Schneider found her at a comedy camp, stuck with her through failed pilots, and eventually gave her the Amanda Show. At one point, he even helped her get legally emancipated from her parents, which meant he could stay in her life as she spiraled in Hollywood. Years later, Amanda accused her father of abuse, and then retracted it and changed it to a father figure. Fans think they know exactly who she was talking about. So for the audience, Nickelodeon gave us happy memories and sitcom jokes. For the actors, it left scars. Kurt Cobain killed by his ex-wife. So this is one of the big ones. Kurt Cobain's death in 1994 was ruled a suicide, right? There's self-inflicted gunshot, heroin in his system, and a note at the scene. That's the official story. But pretty much since the day it happened, people have been saying that doesn't add up. And most of those theories point straight at Courtney Love, his ex-wife. It actually started with Tom Grant, a private investigator who, funny enough, was hired by Courtney herself to find Kurt when he walked out of rehab. Instead of helping her case, Grant ended up becoming her loudest critic. He still swears Kurt was murdered, and that the official story is full of contradictions. His theory got picked up in documentaries like Kurt and Courtney and Soaked in Bleach, and from there, it spread everywhere. The main evidence usually goes like this. First, the note. Kurt talks about how he doesn't feel joy in making music anymore and burned out. Basically, it sounds like he's breaking up with Nirvana, not life. The controversy starts with the ending. The last few lines suddenly shift tone. He wrote directly to Courtney and their daughter, Frances, saying things like, I love you, I love you. Conspiracy theorists argue that part doesn't match the rest of the letter, almost like it was tacked on later. There have even been claims that the handwriting in those last lines looked different, which fueled theories about forgery. Was part of that note written by somebody else to make it look like a suicide? That's the conspiracy fans can't let go. Second, the heroin. The level in his system was extremely high. Like so high that some say he wouldn't have been physically capable of pulling a trigger. Doctors debate that though, because hardcore users can build insane tolerance. Then there's the whole motive angle. Around that time, rumors said Kurt was thinking about divorcing Courtney, and if that happened, she could lose not just her marriage, but also a big chunk of money and influence. On top of that, he was supposedly planning to rewrite his will. If that rumor was true, it could have meant reducing or even removing Courtney's share of his estate. To conspiracy believers, that gave her a financial reason to keep things from changing. So if you put it all together, the theory says Courtney had both money and reputation to lose if Kurt kept going down that road. The thing is, police have rechecked the case and always call it suicide. Kurt's bandmates and friends agree. He was depressed, addicted, and already had a suicide attempt weeks earlier. The truth isn't as wild as the theory, but that's usually how it goes. Hollywood lizard people. Okay, I know this is funny. The idea that some of the most famous people on Earth are shape-shifting reptiles hiding in plain sight. But listen, the story really took off in the 1990s, thanks to David Icke. He used to be a soccer player and sports broadcaster, then he suddenly pivoted into full-time conspiracy theorists. And when I say pivot, I meant he went all in with one of the wildest claims ever. The global leaders, Hollywood stars, even royalty are actually reptilian humanoids from an ancient alien bloodline. According to him, these creatures can shapeshift, blend into human society, and control the world by keeping humans in fear. So if you've ever wondered why the news is so depressing, well, maybe it's not the economy. Maybe it's the lizards. Now, why would anyone believe this? Honestly, because the world already feels like it's run by cold-blooded monsters, the reptile angle just adds a sci-fi coat of paint. Believers will show you evidence too, like a pixel glitch during a news broadcast, or an awkward blink during a concert. All of these clips get slowed down on YouTube with captions like, proof. Some of the big names people point to are Beyoncé, Justin Bieber, Rihanna, Miley Cyrus, and of course, Mark Zuckerberg, who already acts robotic enough that you don't need to add scales. Skeptics have their explanations, of course. Psychologists will tell you it's just pareidolia, the human quirk where we see patterns in random stuff, like faces in clouds or Jesus on a piece of toast. Others say it's just a modern remix of ancient myths. Humans have always had stories about demons, shapeshifters, or creatures walking among us. The internet just updated those old fears into UHD video format. And then there's the question, why lizards? Well, they've been here on Earth long before humans, and evolving quietly in the background. Lizards have survived basically everything for millions of years, so maybe in this theory, their survival strategy was learning to disguise themselves as us. Because if no one knows you exist, nobody's trying to wipe you out. But even if people don't buy into the whole lizard alien theory, there's another one that says some celebrities are actually clones. But we'll get to that in Tier 3. In the end, the lizard people conspiracy doesn't hold up under real investigation, but it keeps spreading anyway. Not because it's proven, but because it's entertaining, creepy, and kind of satisfying to imagine that there's a bigger explanation for the mess the world is in. Tier 3. Did Diddy kill Tupac and Biggie? When Diddy went to trial, people started to ask the question again. Did Puff Daddy have a hand in the murders of Tupac and Biggie? To understand why people even link Diddy to these murders, you've got to look at rap music in the early 1990s. At that time, the West Coast artists dominated the rap scene. Dr. Dre just released The Chronic, and it became the top-selling rap album of 1992. Then his protege, Snoop Dogg, dropped Doggy Style in 1993. And it became the fastest-selling rap album ever. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the country, Diddy was trying to get New York back into the spotlight. He started his own label, Bad Boy Records, and signed a young rapper named Christopher Wallace, then known as Biggie Smalls. In 1994, Biggie released his debut album, Ready to Die, and it was a massive hit, and instantly made him one of the biggest names in music. For New Yorkers, this was huge. Biggie's success proved the East Coast could compete with the West Coast again. Tupac and Biggie actually knew each other before things went bad. In the early 90s, they hung out, recorded together, and even performed on the same stage. Pac once called Biggie his little brother, but that bond didn't last. In November 1994, Tupac was shot 5 times in the lobby of Quad Studios in Manhattan. Pac swore he was set up, pointing the finger at both Biggie and Diddy. Overnight, that friendship turned into hostility, and the East-West rivalry became a ticking bomb. Fast forward to Las Vegas in September 1996, Tupac was shot from a mysterious white Cadillac. Pac fights for almost a week in the hospital, but 6 days later, he's pronounced dead. For years, no one was charged. Then in 2023, Compton gang leader Keith D was arrested and claimed Diddy had offered him $1 million to take out Tupac and Suge. He even said Diddy told him straight up, "I'd give anything for that dude's head." And then 6 months later, Biggie's gone too. In March 97, he's leaving a party in LA, sitting in an SUV, and a drive-by takes him out at 24 years old. This is where he gets sketchy. Biggie was supposedly thinking about leaving Bad Boy. If he left, Diddy's whole empire could have collapsed. Instead, Biggie dies, and Diddy released I'll Be Missing You. The song blows up, and his album goes platinum 7 times. That sounds convenient. And people aren't just stopping at Pac and Biggie. They point at the trail of other people close to Diddy who died in weird ways. Andre Harrell, the guy who basically gave Diddy his big break, dropped dead of heart failure in 2020. And singer Al B. Sure, another close friend, later claimed he was poisoned before his near-death health scare in 2022. Add all that up, and online it looks like Diddy's got bodies stacked around him. Sure, one of the biggest dots in all the Diddy talks is suspicion about his connection to Michael Jackson, and we'll dig into that in Tier 4. Kanye West is a clone. Kanye West keeps vanishing for weeks, coming back looking slightly off, and people on the internet went straight to the wildest answer: clone. Okay, it picked up speed after October 2022. Kanye loves to create controversy. First, the White Lives Matter shirt. Then, the DEFCON 3 tweet that had him dropped by Adidas, locked out of his bank accounts, and pretty much blacklisted overnight. Fans started asking if this was even Kanye anymore, or if someone swapped him out after the meltdown. Then came Orlando Brown's infamous rant about 2 Kanyes. He swore there was a tall one and a short one fighting for who got to be Kanye. Sounds like he'd been high, but people weirdly ran with it. Because right after, Elon Musk let Kanye back on Twitter. And what did Kanye do? He posted a Avril UFO cult symbol. You know, the one tied to human cloning. Some people said that move made it look like he was trolling the clone rumors. Others said maybe he wanted people to know for some reason. Things got darker when Kanye leaked those texts from his trainer. Those texts made it sound like Harley wanted him to play nice or risk getting drugged and sent back to Zombieland. People noticed Harley had done work on military experiments with mind-altering drugs. And Harley also trained with other big names like Mac Miller and Amy Winehouse, both of whom died later. So fans started drawing lines between the trainer and the tragedies. By December 2022, Kanye posted a short cryptic song snippet online and then disappeared for a while. When he popped back up with Bianca, some viewers swore he looked taller. At first, that seemed like proof for the 2 Kanyes crowd, until someone checked Bianca's actual height and realized the math was off. So was Kanye cloned? Probably not, but it's messy. The height stuff was bad math. The cult symbol could have been trolling or performance art. And the leaked texts are just alarmist screenshots without a smoking gun. At the same time, when you dress in weird sock boots, shout about secret societies, post cult symbols, and vanish for months, people are gonna choose the sci-fi explanation that fits the vibe. Either way, Kanye keeps giving material, and the internet is not going to stop making stories. I'll leave it to you. Sia is trapped in Beyoncé's basement. So this one was born because in late 2024, there was a meme claiming that Sia, the Australian pop genius behind hits like Chandelier, was being held captive in Beyoncé's basement and forced her to write her songs. The origin was a Photoshop tweet. On the surface, it looked like gibberish, something about kangaroos, cats, and purple penguins. But if you circled the first letters, it spelled out Beyoncé kidnapped me. Obviously, Sia never typed that. But the fake screenshots blew up anyway. With all the drama around Diddy and other scandals at the time, people were ready to believe anything shady about the industry, and this fit right in. The rumors stuck partly because of how Sia carries herself. She's always hidden behind wigs, stayed out of the spotlight, and quietly written massive hits for other artists, including Rihanna and Beyoncé. One of those was Pretty Hurts, which led fans to joke that maybe Beyoncé had her chained up just to keep the hits coming. The theory says Beyoncé keeps Sia hidden underground, explaining why Beyoncé racks up chart toppers while Sia rarely shows her face. Hashtags like Free Sia popped up, with people pretending this was some dark pop music secret. But the funniest part is Sia herself played along with this parade. She once tweeted, "I live in Beyoncé's basement," just to play along. Princess Diana conspiracy. The official story of Diana's death is supposed to be straightforward, a tragic car accident. But the problem is, nothing about Diana's life was ever straightforward. And when someone that famous dies young, especially in a crash this messy, people are going to dig for answers. Here's what happened. Just past midnight on August 31, 1997, Diana and Dodi Fayed left the Ritz Hotel in Paris. Their driver, Henry Paul, was reportedly 3 times over the legal alcohol limit. They were speeding in a Mercedes and chased by paparazzi on motorbikes. At 12:23 a.m., the car slammed into the 13th pillar of the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. Dodi and Henry Paul died instantly. Diana was pulled out alive but passed away in the hospital a few hours later. Only her bodyguard, Trevor Reese Jones, survived, with no memory of the crash. So the official line is simple. reckless speed, a drunk driver, and no one in the back wearing seatbelts. But the official explanation never killed the rumors. Almost immediately, conspiracy theories took off. Muhammad Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, was their loudest voice. He claimed this wasn't an accident at all, but a hit job ordered by the British establishment. Why? Because the royals couldn't stand the idea of Diana marrying a Muslim, let alone carrying his child. In his words, they wanted her out of the picture to protect the monarchy. Then came the so-called smoking gun, a letter Diana wrote in 1995, where she said Prince Charles was planning an accident in her car, something involving brake failure and a serious head injury. She feared Charles wanted her gone so he could remarry without obstacles. For conspiracy believers, this letter was proof Diana herself predicted her death. And there were other sketchy details, like paparazzi right on their tail, missing CCTV footage from the tunnel, and the weird timeline of how long it took medical help to reach Diana. Add it all up, and you get why people think this wasn't just a car crash. Now, to be fair, investigators went deep. British and French teams looked at like 175 different claims. But their conclusion was Diana wasn't pregnant, the driver really was drunk, and Charles didn't order a hit. Basically, it's a tragic accident, not murder. Still, try telling people that. Nearly 30 years later, her death is still one of the most famous conspiracy theories out there. Tier 4. Aaliyah's death theories. On August 25, 2001, she boarded a small plane in the Bahamas after filming a music video. The weather was fine, the flight was supposed to be routine, but suddenly, the plane went down, killing her and 8 others. Officially, it was labeled an accident, but when you look closer, too many details feel wrong. For starters, the plane itself wasn't meant for passengers. It was a cargo plane. The pilot, Luis Morales, had a suspended license, had been arrested weeks earlier for possession of cocaine, and later tested positive for alcohol and drugs. Despite warnings that the plane was overweight, it was cleared for takeoff. Aaliyah reportedly didn't even want to get on. Some say she was nervous. Others claim she was drugged and carried aboard unconscious. Then you've got the circle of people making decisions for Aaliyah. Director Hype Williams was the one who moved the video shoot from Miami to the Bahamas in the first place. The original plan was to film in Miami using green screens, which would have been safer and far easier. But Hype pushed for the island location. To this day, nobody has explained why the change was necessary. Fans also connect Hype Williams to another tragedy. Months later, Lisa Left Eye Lopes from TLC died in a car crash during a trip to Honduras. Williams was linked to projects around both stars, and conspiracy theorists argue the coincidence feels too heavy to ignore. Then there's the plane situation. Lenny Kravitz reportedly offered Aaliyah his private jet for the trip back. According to people close to her, Hype Williams ended up taking that plane for himself. Aaliyah, meanwhile, was left with the overloaded Cessna and the suspicious pilot. Aaliyah's uncle, Barry Hankerson, doesn't come out clean either. Just 4 days before the crash, his company filed for a waiver in court that would absolve them of liability if anything happened during the shoot. When Aaliyah died, he collected a $90 million wrongful death payout. Convenient timing, to say the least. And of course, you can't tell Aaliyah's story without bringing up R. Kelly. He was nearly twice her age when he began working with her, and by the time she was 15, she was illegally married to him. Court documents later revealed the marriage was arranged because Aaliyah was rumored to be pregnant. Kelly's camp thought tying the knot would protect him from statutory rape charges, since he could claim he believed she was 18. To make matters worse, it was Aaliyah's own uncle, Barry Hankerson, who introduced her to R. Kelly, continued working with him even after the allegations surfaced. Was Aaliyah's death simply the result of negligence and a reckless pilot, or was it orchestrated by people profiting from her success? Nobody knows for sure, but when you line up the waiver, the plane swap, the drugged-up pilot, and the shady men around her, you can see why a lot of people think accident sounds way too convenient. Diddy framed Michael Jackson. Here's the theory. Once Diddy's own scandals exploded in 2023 and 2024, people suspected Diddy supposedly helped take down Michael Jackson. The official story of Michael's downfall is well known. In the 90s and 2000s, he faced multiple accusations of abusing children. The court cases, FBI investigations, and wall-to-wall media coverage really destroyed his reputation. Then, in 2009, Jackson died after his doctor, Conrad Murray, gave him a fatal dose of the anesthetic propofol. Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. That's the official version. Tragic negligence by a reckless doctor. Now we get into the conspiracy. According to them, Diddy fed these allegations to the media to shield himself from his own crimes. A nastier version says Michael found out about Diddy's alleged ring and was ready to go to the FBI, so Diddy shut him up for good in 2009. But what's the proof? Fareem Mr. Fix-It Muhammad. He worked as Michael's bodyguard and later became Diddy's head of security. He also happened to be present on the day Michael died. Then there's Michael's own paranoia. Back in 2002, he went on record saying powerful executives were conspiring against him. And today's retellings, fans plugged Diddy's name into that slot, painting him as one of the real criminals who stayed protected while Michael got dragged. Fake stories even claimed investigators found a secret tunnel connecting Diddy's house to Neverland, complete with photos that spread so far Reuters had to step in and debunk them. And yet, when you strip it back, the facts don't match. Michael's death was investigated in detail. Doctors, not Diddy, were blamed. Law enforcement never connected Diddy to Michael in any way. The two men weren't rivals. They didn't compete in the same circles, and there's no evidence of any feud. True or not, that's the story people hold on to. And on the internet, the story often matters more than the evidence. Nick Cannon has kids for organ donors. Nick Cannon's family tree is less like a tree and more like a whole forest. Every couple of months, he's announcing another kid. At this point, even brands are clowning him. Restaurants offer him 12 racks of ribs. Storage companies promise XXL units for all those baby toys. And while Nick laughs it off, the internet came up with the darkest possible theory. Nick Cannon isn't building a family. He's building a parts factory. Yeah, people swear the only reason he has so many kids is to have a personal stash of organ donors. Here's the logic, if you can call it that. Nick's been battling lupus for years. It attacks the body's organs, and he's been in and out of hospitals, even admitting doctors once told him they didn't know how he was still alive. So conspiracy fans did the math. Nick's sick. Suddenly, he's fathering kids at lightning speed, and the clone army of spare kidneys theory was born, and the internet took it from there. Critics started calling him a cult leader with a baby organ farm. Even Elon Musk jumped in with Nick on Twitter, talking about saving humanity from underpopulation. Yeah, sure. Saving humanity or saving his own kidneys? Is there proof? Absolutely not, but proof isn't the point. Marilyn Monroe was murdered. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her home at just 36 years old. The official story said, probable suicide from a sedative, barbiturate overdose. She was found in bed, phone in hand, and pill bottles nearby. The coroner found sky-high levels of sedatives in her blood. But here's the weird part. There weren't any pills in her stomach. If she swallowed that much, you'd expect some trace left behind. That little detail has kept murder theories alive for over 60 years. So, who did it? Depends on who you ask. The most famous theory points to the Kennedy brothers. Marilyn was close to JFK, maybe even to Bobby too. According to the conspiracy crowd, she knew way too much political secrets, mob ties, even about UFOs, and then threatened to spill it all. Another version blames the CIA. In that version, she was used as a pawn against the Kennedys. The idea is that taking her out would scare the brothers, or worse, frame them, so they'd lose public trust. The mob also gets dragged in, especially mob boss Sam Giancana. The mob wanted payback for the Kennedys' crackdown on organized crime, and Marilyn was caught in the middle. And if that's not messy enough, some theories mash it all together. The mob, the CIA, and the Kennedys all worked together to make sure no dangerous secrets leaked in the middle of Cold War paranoia. Then there's Marilyn's inner circle. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, was called when her housekeeper couldn't wake her. He supposedly broke in through her bedroom window and declared her dead. Conspiracy fans accuse him of being more involved, claiming he gave her a sedative-laced enema that killed her. Since no pills were in her stomach, the idea of a rectal or injected overdose became central to the murder theory. The housekeeper, Eunice Murray, was suspicious too. Her timeline of events kept changing. At first, she said she noticed something was wrong around midnight. Later, she said it was closer to 3 a.m. Police records also contradict her about when she saw Monroe's light on or when she tried to check on her. And strangest of all, when cops arrived, she was busy washing Marilyn's bedsheets in the middle of the night. Even investigators later admitted that it looked suspicious, almost like evidence was being scrubbed away. Now, officially, nothing has stuck. In 1982, the Los Angeles DA reopened the case after public pressure. They combed through autopsy reports, interviewed witnesses, even chased down rumors of a red diary where Marilyn supposedly wrote down secrets about the Kennedys. Their conclusion was no foul play. But here's the thing. A legend as big as Marilyn Monroe doesn't feel like someone who would just fade out with a handful of sleeping pills. For some, the official version works. Depression, drugs, a tragic end. For others, it's way too clean. They'll always believe she was silenced by the Kennedys, by the mob, by the CIA, or maybe all of them together. Tier 5. The Room 23 Penthouse Rumors. On the surface, Room 23 looked like just another Hollywood vanity project. Back in 2009, Sanella Diana Jenkins, a rich entrepreneur, socialite, and philanthropist, dropped a glossy coffee table book packed with moody, high-fashion shots of A-listers. The photos were sleek and sexy, but nothing outrageous. Lindsay Lohan draped across a bed, Hayden Panettiere styled like an old-school movie star, Cindy Crawford glowing under the lights, and Elton John chilling in luxury. All of it shot in a swanky Beverly Hills hotel suite. Jenkins pitched it as a fundraiser for her UCLA Human Rights Foundation. The money went to charity. Celebs look great. Seems simple enough. But the internet never lets anything stay simple. By 2012, gossip blogs like Crazy Days and Nights were whispering that Room 23 wasn't really an art book. It was a catalog. The theory was that these moody portraits were ads for an elite call girl ring. The Beverly Hills penthouse wasn't just a photo set. It was supposedly the headquarters. Things blew up when a mysterious commenter named Him started posting cryptic stuff online. Fans convinced themselves it was Robert Downey Jr. secretly exposing Hollywood. The evidence was paper thin, but the idea of Iron Man dropping truth bombs about a prostitution ring? Yeah, people ate that up. Downey's team denied it right away, but by then, the story had taken on a life of its own. For Jenkins, the fallout was rough. She's broken down about it on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, calling the rumors ridiculous. She said over and over that it was a charity project that got twisted into something ugly. Her words, all you need to do is leak a bunch of fake rumors and you can destroy somebody's life. Mainstream outlets like Associated Press, entertainment fact checkers, you name it, found zero proof of anything tied to Jenkins or Room 23. But once the internet decides a coffee table book is a secret escort catalog, no amount of denials is gonna erase that. Cornell, Bennington, and Avicii silenced. This is one of those theories that takes a bunch of tragedies and mashes them into one big horror story. Chris Cornell from Soundgarden died in May 2017. 2 months later, his close friend Chester Bennington of Linkin Park was gone too. Less than a year later, Avicii, then Anthony Bourdain in June 2018. 4 deaths in a row, and the internet went, that can't just be a coincidence. The theory goes like this: they were all suicided. Not depressed, not struggling, but killed and staged to look like suicides, because they were working on some secret documentary called The Silent Children. Supposedly, this film was gonna expose a global child trafficking ring tied to Epstein and other powerful people. But as usual, on the internet, that turned into, they weren't sad, they were silenced. Sounds cinematic, but reality? Not so much. The Silent Children was a real project idea, but none of those guys were involved. At all. The producers themselves said it was already scrapped months before Cornell died. Corporate records even show the production company was dissolved in early 2017, before Avicii or Bourdain were ever part of the theory timeline. And the deaths themselves? The investigations were clear. Cornell died by suicide in a Detroit hotel room after a show. Bennington also died by suicide at his home in California. Avicii's death was different. He wasn't found hanging, but he had been open about his mental health struggles for years. Each case was tragic, but police and families alike said there was no foul play. So why does the theory keep rolling? Because it plays into a story people love. Powerful voices standing up against dark secrets only to be taken out. It feels like a movie. Sometimes, people would rather believe the thriller version than the painful truth.